Hello, everyone. For the next 30 minutes, I'll be talking about ACI and how can you achieve microsegmentation with ACI. I'm Alejandro Rodriguez. I'm a network solutions architect for Accudata. I'm in charge of all the technologies that goes beyond networking, all the way from the campus, crossing the WAN, and the data center. Why is ACI important in your environment? ACI is important because it integrates security directly into a virtualized environment or a virtualized workload without putting a physical firewall on your data center. Because nowadays, the traffic in a data center is more east-west instead of north-south, and that traffic that goes east-west needs to be securely protected. And you can do that with ACI without putting a firewall. Another important thing about ACI is that you can enable to automatically assign your endpoints into logical security zones called endpoint groups. These endpoint groups are groups of virtual machines or physical servers that can be filtered by network or VM attributes by applying more dynamic policies. ACI and microsegmentation it's a feature that you can enable on your data center, and this is part of these three that you're seeing on your screen are part of the data center network portfolio, Cisco Data Center Network portfolio. Altogether, they work perfectly to have microsegmentation in your environment. On the left, you have Cisco ACI. This is how you make your network simpler, right? You add more security and availability to your network, and it's of course multi-cloud and network environment. On the right-hand side, you have Threetier. Threetier, it adds more workload security to your environment, especially because it is a very powerful application dependency mapping with real-time visibility and insights. It can tell you exactly how your VMs are talking to each other or your bare metal servers are talking to each other. And then with that, you can enforce more policies into your ACI to achieve microsegmentation. And last but not least, you have the network assurance engine, which is the guide that tells you if your network is performing the way that it should be performing. And again, and another thing that you can achieve with network assurance engine is to predict impact of changes. So doing a kind of a workflow here, if you have Threetier in your environment, you can have an application dependency mapping, and with that you can decide to enforce some policies, and before applying those policies into Cisco ACI, you can predict the impact of changes with network assurance engine. You can do a try run and see how your environment will be impacted by those policies that you want to affect. And then you can enforce those policies on ACI automatically and seamless for you. So doing a zoom in into Cisco ACI. What is Cisco ACI? Cisco ACI is simple and better networking for your business. This is based on the Nexus 9K portfolio, covering any bandwidth from 100 megs to 100 gigs. It is used for optimize your data center network, protect your business as well, accelerate your multi-cloud now that we are living in a multi-cloud environment where infrastructure as a service and software as a service is included, as well as your on-prem data center. This is what ACI architecture looks like. And I'm doing an analogy from left to right. Okay, so on your left, you have an old Nexus 7K chassis. This is how it looks like. I'm going to go from top to bottom. On the top, you have your two supervisors, or one or two supervisors. Then on the backplane, you have your fabric models. It could be from 3 to 5 fabric models. And then on the bottom, you have all your line cards that are your access ports for your data center. Doing an analogy to the new architecture of ACI, if we go again from top to bottom, we have the controllers, which are the APICs. That's a cluster of controllers. It could go from 1 to 3. 3 is recommended, or even more if you are extending your fabric into a multi-site or multi-pod. Then we go with the spines. The spines are going to be compared to the fabric models on the Nexus 7K. So these spines are the guys who give the speed to your data center. And then on the bottom, you have the leaves that can be extended up to 200 leaves. So it can scale as you need. You can have more than 200 leaves if you expand your fabric on a multi-pod or a multi-site technology. What are the elements of ACI? The elements of ACI are 4 main elements. The first one is the apex. These are the controllers. This is the brain and the control plane of your data center. Then we have the spines. These spines are the compared to the Nexus 7K. These are the fabric models. They can be modular devices. Normally, the Nexus 9500 are the ones that can be working as a spine, but there are 9300 models that can work as a spine as well. Then we have the leaves. The leaves are pretty much the Nexus 9300s, and there are of course V-pods. These are virtual devices that you can configure to work as a leaf or a spine. And then on the bottom, and last but not least, is the licensing, where you can import all the features that you want to have in your data center environment. ACI Anywhere. ACI Anywhere, it's because you can extend your ACI environment across multiple data centers or even across multiple clouds. From left to right, the first technology to extend your ACI environment is ACI multipod. This is basically having one single fabric extended into multiple data centers, into multiple physical data centers. You can have one data center in one geographical location and another data center in another geographical location, and you can extend a single fabric to be managed by a single cluster across those two physical locations. Then ACI multi-site. This is a multi-fabric environment that it's going to be handled by the same cluster of Apex. Then ACI remote leaf. This is a physical remote leaf that is going to be extended into a different geographical zone or data center, and this ACI remote leaf can be extended through a layer 3 network. ACI vPod. This is for virtualized environment where you don't have space to add an extra leaf. You can virtualize one leaf, and with that you can extend your fabric. And of course the ACI multicloud, where you can extend your ACI environment and include your ACI technologies into your multi-cloud environments like AWS, Azure, or even Google Cloud Public. So what else can I connect into the ACI fabric? I can connect pretty much anything, like directors like MDS to have a fiber channel SAN storage connected into my fabric. Then I can have Red Hats or Docker containers, VM from VMware, layer 3 or layer 7 services, my WAN connection to connect my data center to my campus network, and of course my cluster of APIC. So you can connect pretty much everything. You can have everything handled by the APIC controllers in here. Why is ACI and microsegmentation important? It's to protect your business, okay? Segmentation for any kind of load is included in ACI, so you can segment any kind of load, not just VMware, and you can actually integrate Threetier analytics and network assurance engine for deeper security and assurance. We just talked about them, but I'm gonna do a zoom in into microsegmentation in a little bit. So ACI segmentation. How does it work? First thing is ACI segmentation is a multi-hypervisor around bare metal loads, not only VMware. So let me give you an example. For a ransomware that affects CentOS, whenever CentOS announced that there is a vulnerability found on CentOS, and it happens that in your environment you have more than 500 virtual machines, and probably out of those 500 virtual machines, 300 are running via operating system CentOS. How long will it take for you to identify all the CentOS-based vulnerable servers in your network and prevent risk without ACI? With ACI, you can do segmentation and microsegmentation to automatically segment those virtual machines and protect the rest of your network. How does Cisco Threetier enables microsegmentation in my environment? The first thing is communication control using whitelisting. So this is following the zero trust model. I'm not going to trust anyone unless you whitelist the communication. If you tell me that application A is going to talk to application B through a certain port, then I'm going to open that port for that communication. The other way around, I'm not gonna leave anyone to talk to each other. Then application segmentation, this is segmentation based on application, not only on hardware and policy enforcement. Process behavior analysis and baselining, and some software inventory baseline and vulnerability detection. So Threetier can enable segmentation based on vulnerability announced by any kind of vendor or operating systems. ACI microsegmentation, how does it look like in a full environment? So in a full environment, you can have public cloud, private cloud, and on-premise ACI environment. And if you add Cisco Threetier to your environment, to your full environment, you can get application workplace. You can see how the applications are talking to each other. And with that, you can generate an application segmentation policy that can be enforced through ACI, and then you can achieve microsegmentation in your environment. That's why it is important. It's important to have microsegmentation because normally we are worried about the perimeter security, but what if we get attacked from underneath, right? Whenever they already come into the data center, they already cross the border of the perimeter security. We're not going to have any kind of security to protect my east-west traffic. So with application segmentation policy generated by Threetier and enforced by ACI to achieve microsegmentation, you can add more security to your data center environment. So let me jump real quick to a whiteboard because I want to show you some examples on how microsegmentation is achieved with ACI. So first thing is, I want to talk about what is microsegmentation. So a microsegmentation is to assign endpoints into logical security zones. So microsegmentation is to assign endpoints to security zones. So what is microsegmentation in ACI? Microsegmentation in ACI is assigning endpoints into security zones, into different security zones. So it's assigning the endpoints into security zones. Right? And how can we get this? You can assign these endpoints into different security zones based on network, VMs, or even IP attributes. Let me give you an example. So on a two-tier based application, we're going to have a web server, the web server EPG, and the applications EPG. Okay, so natively and by default, these two endpoint groups cannot talk to each other, okay? If you want them to be communicated, you need to create a contract in between them. So if you want them to have communication, you need to create a contract and make them to talk to each other. But from this environment, we can actually microsegment the web server EPG into two different EPGs. These are going to be micro EPGs. So all these the servers that are going to be included in these two micro EPGs are going to be part of the same EPG as the web servers, but inside the micro EPGs, these two are not going to be able to talk to each other. So you can have two different EPGs, one for production web servers and one for development web servers. So this is the first example of microsegmentation. This, of course, the development web servers and the production web servers cannot talk to each other, so you can do whatever you want on the development web servers, and the production web servers are not going to be affected because there's not a contract in between them that can make them talk to each other. Let me jump to another example how microsegmentation is achieved. Let me draw a three-tier application architecture. So we have our web server EPG, then the application EPG. And then we're going to have an EPG that is going to be called quarantine. Okay. So from these, we can have different microsegments, EPGs from these two. We can have Windows, servers, and CentOS servers. Same thing for the applications, so Windows and CentOS. And following the example that I gave you during the PowerPoint presentation, if CentOS announces that there is a vulnerability for a specific CentOS version, then you can quarantine those servers and make ACI to migrate those endpoints into a quarantine endpoint group, and then you can handle those CentOS upgrades or patching from that specific EPG without affecting your environment. And then you're actually protecting, because now those CentOS virtual machines are not going to be able to talk to your data center until you actually release them from the quarantine. So CentOS announces the vulnerability. You're going to move those endpoints into a different EPG, microsegment EPG. That are going to be completely isolated from the other two EPGs. So you're actually protecting all your data center environment automatically. You just set the policy, hey, I need all the CentOS servers to be moved into a quarantine EPG. And all these moves, you can configure all these moves based on VM attributes, network attributes, and IP attributes. If we go to the network, the VM network attributes, VM virtual machine attributes, we can segment the VMs based on the next list. You can microsegment your virtual machines based on the VMM domain. So your virtual machine domains, you can tell ACI, hey, I want to microsegment every virtual machine that belongs to this specific virtual machine domain. You can set microsegment based on operating system, hypervisor, VM identifier, the virtual machine name as well. And then you can create your custom attributes that can include as many as you want from the rest of the attributes in the list. So with the custom attribute, you can actually tell ACI, hey, I want to microsegment any virtual machine that has CentOS operating system, but that only belongs to the data center number 3. So only the virtual machines that accomplish these two parameters are going to be microsegment into a different EPG. Let me put another use case of microsegmentation. So if you had a VDI environment, this is the EPG for VDI environment, that it will have communication to the internet and to the internal resources. But you want to microsegment the VDI EPG into 3 different groups, because you don't want these groups to talk to each other. So you want to have your HR environment, your finance environment, and your marketing environment to be completely microsegment from each other. But you want them to still have communication to the internet and to the internal resources. So doing a workflow from this environment, the marketing and the finance microsegments, they cannot talk to each other, so there is no communication through between these two endpoints, microsegment endpoint groups. But from marketing, you can actually have access to the internal resources and to the internet as well. And same thing for finance. And same thing for HR. But the communication between these three, it's denied, unless you create a whitelist policy. Remember that the microsegment environment from ACI, it's following the whitelist policy model. Let me do a third example of how microsegmentation can be achieved on ACI. So on a three-tier environment, we have the application EPG, the database EPG, and then the web browser, the web server EPG. Okay, and within these three, inside these three, we have three different machines. Okay, we have VM1, VM2, and then VM3. Same thing for the database, VM1, VM2, and VM3. Same thing for web, VM1, VM2, and VM3. And you're going to have a microsegment EPG that it's called Micro EPG Upgrade. Windows. So these microsegment EPG is for upgrading all the windows that are running Windows Server version 2008, and you want to upgrade it into 2012. So you can create policies to migrate all the virtual machines that are running that specific operating system into these microsegment EPG. And for this example, from the application EPG, VM1 is the one that is going to be moved, VM2 from the database, and then web browser is VM3. So at the end, you're going to end up with VM1 from the application, from the database it's VM2, and from the web it's VM3. And then you can handle those three virtual machines and upgrade them. And then once they don't fit into the microsegment EPG, because that microsegment EPG will only handle virtual machines that are running Windows 2008. So whenever they come back with 2012, they will be automatically moved back to where they belong at that beginning. Now, let me give you a real example on how microsegment could be looking into in one of your ACI environments. So we're going to have an EPG. This is an EPG that is made for web servers. Okay, this is web servers. And then this web server will be microsegmented into two different microsegments EPGs. One is going to be for production, and the other one will be for development. So this is for production, and this is for development. And then you're going to have a second EPG that will be your database. This is the database EPG. Okay. Then I need to access from somewhere in my network these web servers and these database servers as well. So I'm going to have a layer 3 cloud on the left and a layer 3 cloud on the right. The one on the left will be your production network. This is your production network, and the one on the right is going to be your development network. So first thing, we need to create contracts to communicate the database with the microsegment EPGs, okay? So we're going to have a contract here that will allow the communication from the database, to both of the EPGs, okay? So I need the database to provide information, and I need both microsegments to consume from that contract, okay? So that way now you know that your microsegments from development and production of the web servers are going to be consuming from the database. Now, I need to communicate my development network with my development EPGs in a microsegment EPG and my production layer 3 network with my production microsegment EPG. So I will need to have two different contracts. These contracts the provider will be the microsegment from the web servers, because I want my web servers to be announced into that contract, and then I want my layer 3 network to consume from there, and same thing for the development microsegment EPG. Of course, under my EPGs, I can have virtual machines, or I can have bare metal machines. Same thing here, and here virtualized. Maybe here the bare metal only, and this could be virtualized and bare metal as well. This is a full example of how can you configure microsegmentation in ACI, and this microsegmentation can be achieved automatically if you set the correct policies in your environment, if you set the policies based on operating system or maybe based on name. If your virtual machines are called development or have the word development on its name, can be microsegment into the microsegment, development microsegment. So remember, if you want to enforce security in your data center environment, you can achieve microsegmentation with ACI, and you can have more visibility and insights if you include titration in your environment. And titration will give you a deeper look on how your applications are talking to each other, so you can create those policies and enforce them with microsegmentation on ACI. After this, I want to thank you all for being here. And remember, if you want to enforce policies in your data center, ACI and microsegmentation is the best way to go. And if you still want to learn a little bit more of ACI and microsegmentation, please engage with your accounting representative to book a day with an expert on ACI.